Have you ever felt like you've had the independent, individualistic movement shoved down your throat, later to realize that's just not how you actually want to live? That's because that's not how God created us to live. He actually intended for us to live in community. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about what that means and what that looks like. So today we're going to be talking about Jennie Allen's Find Your People, both her book and her study guide, which, as you guys have seen, I've been doing the Bible studies every Saturday, and then it comes with a study guide, and then we're also, I'm personally reading her books just because I love everything that she teaches. And this time it is about community, which is something that I felt I needed to hear. And today I'm here with my amazing husband, Juan Ava. Hey, babe.
What's up?
So, doing this, I felt convicted because I don't feel like we're huge on community until we have events. And then I realize how much people we do have in our lives who love us and are there for us. But I feel like on a day-to-day, we could probably do better.
I don't think that's what you said is not the way you said it is not accurate.
Okay.
Community is big to us, but we get caught up in our day-to-day things that we're doing, and I think our community does as well.
Right.
It's like when everybody talks about, like, you have those best friends that you don't see for a while, but as soon as you pick up right where you left off.
Yeah.
That's basically our relationship with a lot of the people of our community, because we live a little bit away from everybody, and we get caught up in day-to-day things, just being busy, and since it is, roughly 30 minutes, anytime we're going to hang out with anybody, everybody has their own things going on. I think that's pretty common for people who live a little bit farther away. But yes, community is big to us, but we just don't initialize the day-to-day interactions.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that was worded better.
Yeah.
I think it was just because I felt convicted because one of the things that really stood out to me was she said people who live further away from you, like, that's great. They're always going to be in your life. Love them, all that stuff. She was like, but you do need people, at least 5 people who live within 5 miles of you. That way, if you need to call someone to come help out with something real quick, you have that person to call. Someone to stop by, drop off a casserole, someone to help you pick up your kids. Like, she was like, instead of like trying to fit people into your life, create a life that those people are already a part of.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I thought about it, and I was like, how many people do I even know? Not that I'm friends with, but how many people do I know who live within 5 miles of us? And I was like,
I know people.
What do you know?
The neighbor.
Well,
that neighbor.
Recently met him.
Catty corner, and the neighbor behind us.
I haven't met the neighbor behind us. And that was like one of the things I said I would do during this Bible study.
Yeah.
And I still haven't met them.
We're just going to have to yell out the window and be like, hey.
Hey, I'm Brenda. Nice to meet you. But yeah, we'll get more into that. But yeah, I remember when we were in the early chapters, so I was like, okay, my homework is, because the hurricane had just happened, so our fence had gotten knocked down, and we had said we were going to get with the neighbor, we're going to go meet them, and it's weeks later.
We had no boundaries. We were sharing a backyard it took me, a month before I was free to actually put the fence back up, give or take. It was about a month. And so they actually had the same thought process, like, hey, we want to get to know them, and me and him were gonna talk about the fence. I didn't know this, and then I was putting up the fence, and as I'm closing the barrier back up, she comes out and she was like, hey, she's like,
the wife.
Yeah, the wife. Well, I was about to get there.
Okay.
She comes out and she's like, hey, we've been meaning to talk to y'all. We've been wanting to get to know y'all, and also, discuss the fence, however it's going to be done. And I was like, it's fine. I got it. Don't worry about it. And she's like, well, my husband, he's busy, like, during work, and after work, when he sees you, he goes to get ready to come out here and talk to you about it. She's like, and then you're gone. And I was like, well, I don't know. I stay pretty busy. So I was like, well, just tell him like this Sunday, because she said that's when they were free. I was like, tell him Sunday that I'll get with him and I'll talk about it with him. And then I felt bad when he came to knock on the door, and I didn't realize it was him. And then I talked to him through the Ring camera, and I told him, I was like, hey, I'll be home in 45 minutes. I was like, and I'll swing by the house over there and we'll talk. Well, that's when I went to go get the U-Haul for your mom, and they messed up the whole U-Haul order or whatever. Whatever, things happened back and forth to where we didn't end up meeting, but we had no, like, one sharing a backyard. We still never met them.
Yeah. And we did find out they actually go to our church.
Yeah. I seen them at our church. I pointed them out. I was like, hey, that's the neighbors. They were sitting like all the way across from us.
Yeah. But is that still on our to-do list?
Yeah, we'll get to know them.
Okay.
Next time I'll be like...
Yeah, so this study is all about community and how iron sharpens iron, and how we're all of us are part of the body of Christ, and we each have a role. So we each need each other in order for the body to work properly. Just like your brain needs to be functioning, your heart needs to be functioning, and your body, same thing. And I really like it because I feel like the independent movement is pushed a lot here in the U.S. How many songs are out there talking about Miss Independent or being independent, or I don't need nobody, nobody was there for me, self-made, I did it on my own, all those things, right? So it gets, I don't know if the word is glorified or it's...
Yeah, that's the word that came to mind.
Yeah, it gets like what's the word I'm looking for?
Hyped up.
Hyped up, yeah. Romanticized.
There you go.
Yeah. When in reality, we weren't meant to live like that. So, in the intro of this book, she has a quote, and it says, "It is not good for men to be alone." And that's a quote directly from God. Mm-hmm. God said that after he built the first human on earth. So, he made Adam, and then he was like, he needs a helper. Mm-hmm. So, that just goes to show how we all need each other. And I feel like, especially for women, it's been pushed a lot. Like, do not depend on a man, do not rely on a man. Which I understand where it comes from. Somebody got hurt. The man wasn't reliable. Mm-hmm. And so now they don't want other women to have to suffer what they suffered. But the real message should be how to find a man who is reliable, who will treat you right, who does his role that he's supposed to be doing. Not just disregard all men completely. And that's something that I grew up with, and I had to relearn as I got older. Mm-hmm. I know my mom intended it for good when she would tell me never rely on a man, and I thank her for that, because I didn't stay like in any toxic situations because I was relying on a man. But it also hurt me because I struggled a little bit more to connect and have that healthy relationship where we're interdependent of each other. Obviously, like, you were the right person for me, so I wasn't going to find that anywhere else. But with you, I felt safe to where I was like, okay, I know I'm supposed to let my guard down. I know I'm supposed to be trusting him. Things could go south, but instead of thinking that way, I'm going to think, God is good. God is going to be with us. And I'm going to trust God first. And then I'll trust my husband second.
Yeah.
I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
No. I mean, that's more about us than it is community. But I mean, I guess, yeah, you could start there. If you're a super independent person and you're not even able to maintain a relationship with, like, in connections because you are independent. I grew up independent too. Since like 6th grade, I was never at my house. My house was just to sleep at. Parents were always working. Older brothers were hanging out with their friends or doing sports, and then I would just go hang out with friends. So I was independent from my physical home, but I hung out with friends. So I kept that like community thing there. And then even as I've gotten older, I do a lot on my own, and I'm always like, I'm not gonna bug anybody to come help me to do things, but I'm always like, hey, if I need help, just let me know. So I also learned, I forget where we've seen it at, and then you're like, yeah, that's what you do. And we've seen it in the movie at New Hope, where it's like, you have to be a friend for that friend. I think Pastor Tim was telling us, you got to be a friend. So I need to go help them before, I need to ask them for help before they'll ask me for help sometimes. So then that relationship grows that way, which I hadn't really thought about it that way. I was like, but that makes sense. Because if I ask you for help and I'm like, hey man, thank you so much. And then, the next time you need help, you're like, hey, no, you probably call him.
And I also don't know if that's also like a men thing, y'all's ego. Sometimes you guys don't want to ask for help. And that's another thing we learned from her study guide, because she also has videos. And we watched the video together, and I remember she mentioned that sometimes she would lose friends, and it was because the friends told her, like, we feel like you don't need us. So then it doesn't create that strong bond between them.
Yeah.
And I feel like it hit home with you.
Yeah, I think that was back to, like, when it hit home with me, it was because of work. Because at home, I'll do everything by myself until I can't. I'll try everything by myself first, because I'm like, I'm not going to go pay that person to do this at the house. I might do it and take long and then be like, hey, I probably do need to pay somebody to come fix my mess up.
Like the meme, it's like, you don't want to pay someone to come do it, so you spend money on the tools, 5 trips to Home Depot.
Yeah, just pay the person. But I'll do a lot of stuff on my own, and then I don't go ask for help. But it hit home because of work. It's like, there's a lot of times in my old job, or even my job now, where we would do things, and like we would get into situations where we really had to depend on each other. And when we had to do that, it created a bond. I think when you do like physical active things, you release dopamine, right? So I think when you release dopamine together, and it's like, especially for guys, it's like when guys go play sports, they build that bond together. That's a teammate. When you go work together and it's like physically demanding, or it's like a long day and you go through a lot of stuff and have to depend on each other, create a bond. So that's why it hit home with me. I was like, hey, like, I knew that was my coworker and I just worked with him, but if we were in the parking lot and I had a flat tire or whatever, they would stop and start helping me. Even if I got it on my own, they're still going to stop and be there just in case I need anything. So that's what it made me think of.
Yeah, I think you also told me about fear in the military. Like, it also creates a bond between people.
Well, I was just saying in general, if you ever experience something where it's called fear bonding, that like people connect that way big time. Like, that's why in the military it's such a brotherhood, because you've gone through things and almost like lost life together. And then you're like, oh, like freaked out, and then afterwards you're like, holy shit. Yeah, I mean, not even in the military, that's not just the only place, but it's like, if somebody, something almost happens and you freak out, but you're with somebody and y'all stick together and ride it out, and then afterwards y'all laugh about it, and there's like a bond, and because it's like we've been through stuff together.
Yeah, I think for women it's more being vulnerable with each other and like opening up and talking. That's like how we bond, sharing our feelings and emotions. Yeah,
y'all are talkers, we're doers.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people know this, but they've been burned before, so then they're scared to let their guard down again. And one of the things she says is, people make up the best parts of life, and people make up the most painful parts of life. So you can't have one without the other if you're going to be that close to someone. It says, connection costs something more than many are willing to pay. It requires you to risk your comfort and your routines, which is so true, because she also talks about a friend that she has who's a pastor in, she talks about 2 of them, one in Rwanda, one in the Middle East. I don't know if it's, but anywho. So the one in Rwanda tells her that in their community, people lived in tents. And it was a very close community because there were no walls and no doors.
Fences.
Yeah, no fences. And so everybody was just felt free to come and go as they pleased. And then once people started donating money and the community started, people started building houses, and it just started getting better. They were more comfortable, but they weren't as close because now they had built the walls. And it does require you to step out of your comfort zone, because sometimes you have your own little routine going, you're comfortable, and then someone calls like, hey, I need help with this. So now you're like, dang it, I have so much stuff to do, and now I have to go make time for this person.
Yeah.
So, but it's so worth it.
Yeah. Well, how I said, like, I know the neighbor. I'm friends with the neighbor because when I picked up the leg extension leg curl machine, the thing weighs like 500 pounds minimum.
And he when he says he does everything by himself, he really means it. He'll be lifting things that are like 100 pounds, over 100 pounds.
But so I went to go pick it up, and I bought it on Facebook Marketplace from some people who own a gym, and they're like, it's just you? I'm like, yeah, I got it. And they're like, we'll help you. And I was all right, cool. But after they helped me, we talked a little bit, and we were like, hey, cool, whatever. And I come home, and I was like, all right, I got to get it down. It's not going to ride in the back of my truck forever. So I'm lowering it down, and the neighbor sees me, and I have it halfway down. I'm holding it. It's propped up. This thing, like, probably would have hurt my back if he didn't help me. And he runs over because he's seen me. He's like, man, let me help you. Hold on. And he helps me, and he gets it down. And ever since we introduced each other, and ever since then, like, we talk all the time. Last time he was working on his truck and needed some tools, so I let him borrow my whole tool set and everything. And so he felt comfortable asking me, because even though he initiated it, he came and helped me. So I feel like he felt comfortable just asking me.
Yeah.
So.
And to some people, they're like, well, yeah, that's your neighbor. No, this is huge for us because...
That's why we said we're not the best at initiating with the community.
Yeah. Yeah, because I lived here for 10 years. Never met my neighbors. Ever.
Well, the old neighbors were understandable. These are new neighbors.
Yeah. Yeah, and also because I used to live by myself. So I just didn't want anyone to try to get too comfortable and come over and...
Yeah.
But now that I'm married, you're here, it's different. You can talk to the guys, and then if I ever meet the ladies, so...
Yeah, even his little daughter says hi to me all the time. I think she's like 3 years old. She's always like, hi.
Yeah, it's so cute. Yeah, so talking about initiating, she says that we usually wait for someone else to initiate. And she says, we've replaced intrusive, real conversations with small talk. And we've substituted soul-bearing, deep, connected living with texts and a night out together every once in a while. Which is true. I feel like that's... Like, for us, the thing is that we grew up in the same town. So, if we lived back home, it would be easier for us to stay connected. Yeah. But we now live about 45 minutes away from there. So, we still keep in touch with them the best that we can. And then friends in Houston, I tried a little bit. I feel like now, since I don't go to Houston, it's mainly just Ale that I still talk to that's in Houston. We seen Michelle the other day. But it's not as like before.
It's not the same connection you had before. It wasn't as consistent and all that.
Yeah, well, I'm saying, like, there's certain people that I don't see as much or talk to as much anymore from Houston, just because distance. I'm not.
Yeah.
And that's huge. Like, proximity. Where are you at?
Yeah.
And but yeah. So what this study helped me realize is now I need to find a new group that is within 5 miles of us.
Yeah.
And we need to initiate.
Yeah, we just need to do a better job.
Yeah. And it says, God built us for deep connection to be a part of our day in, day out lives, not just once in a while in the presence of a paid therapist. This episode was sponsored by the Injury Paralegal with Adam and Garza Law Firm. If you guys are ever in an accident, they are the people to call. I personally used them whenever I was in an accident, And throughout the whole process, they always made me feel like family, like my health was their priority. And they were able to get me a settlement that I was happy with. So if you guys are ever in this situation, I recommend you save her phone number. I'll share it on the screen. Go follow her on Instagram, the Injury Paralegal, and just have this information on you, because you just never know. Hopefully nothing ever happens, but at least that way, for example, when it happened to me, I had the adrenaline going. This had never happened to me. I wasn't sure what to do. I called Monse, and then she guided me throughout the whole process. They also speak Spanish, so if you or a family member doesn't speak English, you guys can also give them a call. All right, so she also says that we live guarded because we fear someone will use our weaknesses against us, which can happen. And I'm sure it has happened to you. Somebody took something that you told them in confidence, or you just needed someone to talk to, and then they turn around and use it against you. It does happen. You will get hurt. Now, I think what's important to realize is this a pattern with that person? Or is this a one-time thing that they did and maybe they didn't realize they were hurting you? Because to me, it has happened to me where it's like, maybe someone wasn't there for me when I needed them, and it's like, okay, but they were there a whole bunch of other times, or whatever, XYZ. And then there's times where it has been a pattern, and I'm like, okay, I no longer want this person in my life. And I think it's important to be able to make that distinction as well.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because we're not perfect either. I'm like, at some point, I wasn't there for that person.
Yeah.
And I didn't do it on purpose. Maybe I just didn't realize how important it was for them. And at that time,
yeah,
I was consumed with my own things.
I also think like us going like with all the stuff from the engagement, the wedding, and then the baby shower and everything, we get to see how like our communities comes out for us. But then I reflect on it and I'm like, dang, I was unaware of how selfish I was with my time at times. Like when people had events or something, as simple as RSVP, you do not understand how frustrating that is until you are the person waiting for somebody to RSVP.
Yeah.
So I was guilty of it. People would be like, hey, just let me know if you're coming or not. I'm like, yeah, probably. And then, they're like, hey, we need the RSVP. And then, never RSVP. And they don't know if you're showing up or not, or they do expect you, and then you don't show up. And they're like, you didn't show up. You said you're going to. Just RSVP. If you can't make it, simply say, hey, I'm sorry. Someone's this, and this. Whatever it is, it's valid to you. It may not be valid to them at the time, or whatever it may be. Just communicate it. That is huge.
Yeah.
And after, it took us going through things for me it takes life experiences for you to understand that. So now I reflect on it and I'm like, dang, I should have made a bigger effort to help pre-wedding for somebody's wedding, and I just show up and celebrate, which is great. But they were close community. I was like, dang, I should have been there for that. I should have put more effort and attention and involvement into these things. So I feel like we've done that. Learning.
Yeah.
We're growing. We're not perfect.
Yeah. And same for me, because I was very selfish. It was just all about me, especially whenever I was working, doing pageantry, fitness competitions. Like, it was me, always. And I have to do this. And I was never there for anyone. And I didn't realize, I wasn't being a good friend, because in my mind, I had to be selfish, and I had to be, especially I start listening to those motivational videos where it's like, cut everybody out and just grind and focus. And then I'm like, this is BS. And then I felt bad because I wasn't there for a lot of people's important moments.
Yeah. And
I didn't realize until I was going through an important moment. And then, but I was also able to give those people grace, because I'm like, okay, I've been where you are. I understand where my head is at. And
yeah.
And I'm just thankful for the people who are there.
Yeah.
And who they've gone through it first. So then
Yep.
So then that's why they're here now. Because they're like, well, we know what you're going through. We're here.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. And it's those people that have had those life experiences or something similar that show up the most when you're going through what they've been through. So it's huge, because, sometimes when we're just being ourselves, we're like, oh, whatever. if you start initiating that, like for your community, you've gone through things that other people haven't. So you can help them in those situations, give them advice, just be there for them. Showing up, I mean, for the baby shower and we set up and everything, I was there super early. And I was doing everything, I was fine, but I still needed that set of hands. I needed somebody to just do this, to hold something like this while I did something else. And I was like, I need somebody, but who do I call? Because it was early. And then when Lily and Julio showed up, and he just started helping me with so much different stuff, it was a big difference. And they showed up when they did. And the other people that did show up, too, have been through those things. They were the first ones showing up to help out.
Yeah. Yeah, and even I'm going back to like our engagement dinner. It just really meant a lot to me because at that time, one of my bridesmaids was going through something very difficult in her life. And she showed up and she was helping set everything up. And I didn't know what she was going through until after. She told me later. And I was like, oh my goodness. Like the fact that you even showed up when you're going through that.
Yeah.
And then the fact that not only you showed up, but you showed up to help set up before. And it just made me, like, appreciate her so much more because I was like, I don't know, like, you're going through something really tough and you're here for me.
Yeah.
During my happy time.
Yeah. Even, I said what Chris Bum said last time, but he got interviewed by Chris Williamson, and he asked him, how important is it to... He's a world champion. He's like, how important is it to have somebody to share it with versus doing it by yourself? He's like, what's the difference in that? What's the pressure? Or is there a greater satisfaction having somebody, you need somebody at your side, he's talking about his wife, or doing it by yourself? And he's like, well, I can't answer that because I've never done it by myself. She's been by my side the whole time. He's like, but, he's like, all the stuff you go through and all the selfishness he had to be world champion, he still had to maintain that relationship. He said it's a greater satisfaction knowing that he maintained the relationship with his wife than it is the championship. And he's like, at the end of the day, who doesn't want to hug when you did a good job? And I was like, those simple words, they explain community. Who doesn't want to hug at the end of the day when you did a good job? Yeah. And I was like, dude, that's good.
Yeah. And I love that because it's true. Like, accomplishing things it's great. You get that great feeling, but then if you look around and there's somebody beside you to celebrate with you, I guess it even worth it. Yeah,
it makes you think about, like, because I'm sure we've all done stuff that we've done it, and then it's like you did it, and you look around and everybody else has like somebody they're doing stuff with, or even if they lost, they have a companion or whatever, and you're just there and you're like, well, good job. It's not the same as somebody, giving you a hug or dabbing you up and being a good job or congratulations. So community's huge.
Yeah, and it also like tells you in the Bible, like, yes, like accomplishing things is great, but was the commandment to love God and to love others? Was the Great Commission to go out and make more disciples, to baptize them, and to live in community? Yeah. So if you're not, so like it tells you like relationship is the most important thing that we can do on earth. I'm not saying don't go out and try to accomplish things. Like, those things are great, but don't do it at the expense of relationships. Yep. Oh, and look. So that's what that's what's next. She says, outside of Jesus, relationships are the greatest gifts we have on earth and simultaneously the most difficult part of being alive. And then another thing that she mentions was how God basically set the example, not only with Adam and Eve, but also himself. God lives in community. God is 3 in 1. So it's the Father, the Holy Spirit, Jesus, the Son. And then not only that, but then there's also other beings in heaven with him. He's not up there alone. So I don't think that I ever thought of it that way until I read it from her. And I thought that was so interesting because you hear there's one God, but like what he's saying is I'm the big boss, basically. Yeah. He's not saying I'm the only one. Like, I'm here alone. There's nobody else around me. It's like, if you're going to worship someone, worship me. If you're going to ask it of me. but he's not alone up there.
Yeah.
To the point to where I recently learned, I think we talked about this in a different podcast, how there's other gods with the little g, and it mentions it in Psalms, and then Jesus also talks about it in the New Testament. And I was like, I've never heard of this. I've always heard like there is only one God.
Yeah.
But I think what that means is like he's the...
Yeah, but in the Bible it says the one true God.
The one true God.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like the other little g gods, we're not supposed to be worshiping them or praying to them or anything like that.
That's why he's also called the King of Kings.
Yeah. So I think to me it was like a little mind shift because it sometimes when I would hear sermons, it made it sound like there was only him and that was it. It was not that it's only him. He's the main one. Does that... I don't even know if I'm saying that right.
Yeah. That's understandable, what you're saying.
Yeah.
Making sense.
Yeah. And then in chapter 2, she goes on to talk about how we crave connection. And then she uses the show Friends as an example. And I related to this because I love that like shows that are about community. So you have Friends, literally no boundaries. You have New Girl, also they're all living together. How I Met Your Mother, some of them live together at some point. Like whatever shows that are about friends being super connected.
Mm-hmm.
And also because they're comedies.
Yeah.
But I've always been drawn to those. And even like when I used to work a lot and then, you know, have to be in Houston after work and all that, I would come home and like my way of unwinding would be putting on a comedy show, and it was usually a friendship show like that. Yeah. And it would just bring me so much comfort, which is ironic because at that time I wasn't making time for anybody else, but I was craving it to where I was like, at least I get to watch it on TV.
You know what that made me think about?
What?
You gone on a... Let's think about your birthday when we went to Lake Travis. And you're in that community, right? You're all having fun. You're all hanging out. And there's been multiple trips like where it's community like that. But when you come home, you're just kind of like... It's kind of quiet. It's those trips that like you almost don't want to leave the people. You don't mind leaving the place, but leave the people because you had so much fun with them.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like... That's why everybody does after parties. Because they don't get enough of hanging out with the people. And it's the same way when you come back from a trip and you're in your car driving back and you're just like... You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's different. Yeah, it's good. You know, it's needed too. Those, not to just be around them 24/7, but you get that feeling, and I think I'm assuming most people have gone on trips or done parties and be like, oh, let's do an after party because they want to keep hanging out.
Yeah, and before I forget, I mentioned like in Friends that there were no boundaries. Just want to make clear, I'm not saying don't have boundaries. Please have boundaries. It's a comedy show. That's why they don't have any. But in real life, you do need to have boundaries. I had people ask me like, you know, when do you know you need to cut somebody off, or, you know, make sure that you're not being taken advantage of. And it's, like I said, it's a pattern. That's the main thing. And sometimes God will place difficult people in your life to work in a certain aspect of your character. So if you win and you ask God for patience, I've learned to never ask for that. He may place someone in your life who it may require you to have a lot of patience with. Or maybe sometimes you don't even ask, but God's like, you know what? You could work on your patience. Or you know what? You can work on your empathy. You know what? You could work on, like we talked about earlier, being there for somebody else. So let me put you in a situation to where you need it, and then that way you're able to give it back to somebody else.
Yeah, it's an eye-openers.
And that's when it talks about iron sharpens iron. Is not always giving each other good advice. Sometimes it's you're dealing with a difficult person. They're just making you a better person because of the way you're dealing with it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I always joke when something's not going my way and I'm trying to put something together and it's tedious and the bolt won't fit or whatever I'm doing, and I'm like, you'll be right there. I'm like, God, I remember asking for patience.
Yeah, you did say that. And then she says relational is who we are because it's who God is. So how it talked about him being the 3-in-1. And then she says, but we shouldn't put all our trust and hope in imperfect humans and expect them to fill God's role in our lives. First, love God and then people. Mm-hmm. So I know there's also people who are super dependent on others. And that's not good either because humans aren't perfect. People will let you down. You're going to let somebody down. And you have to understand that that's because they're human. It's not anything personal towards you. We're flawed. And the only one who will never let you down is God. Mm-hmm. So never expect perfection from a human or never expect someone to never let you down. It's going to happen. Like, just know, expect it. It's going to happen. And you just got to learn how to move on from it.
Yeah, expect it in a way that is not negative or condescending on people to where you're like, oh, you're just going to let me down anyway, so why am I going to put that effort? Don't do that.
Yeah.
Understand it's going to happen, and when it does happen, show grace where it's needed. Because you're going to fail, just like you said. You're going to fail people too, and you're going to want them to give you grace. Mm-hmm. Because we're not perfect. So don't go in the mindset of, oh, they're going to fail me, so I'm going to have my guard up, and that's just as miserable as just being alone all the time. Mm-hmm. Because you're self-sabotaging, and you're sabotaging what has the potential to be something.
Yeah. And I love that you clarified that, because that's true. Like, we talked about cynicism. Or like how I mentioned, somebody got hurt, and they're like discarding all men now. Mm-hmm. Don't be that way. What I mean by they're going to let you down is what Juan just said. Know that it's going to happen, and you're going to have to show grace. And like you said, you're going to want them to have grace with you too, because you're not perfect either. I think sometimes we forget that. We're like, hey, I'm not perfect either. I've let people down too.
Yeah. That's where trust comes in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because maybe they'll let you down this time, but it was for some whatever reason. Or
yeah.
But they'll be there next time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's all case by case.
Yeah. All right. So, it says the community God desired for us is to make each other better, which we talked about. As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. We remind each other of God and his plans for us. So it says that you and I may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith. And I feel like our church has done a great job of doing that for us. Yeah. It says, I'm looking at my notes, and it corrected we to wedding. Oh. So it says, we fight for each other not to be distracted by sin. And then the Bible verse is, but exhort one another every day as long as it's called today, that none of you may be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. So I think that's important how it says today. Because if you have an issue with someone, make sure to address it right then and there. Instead of waiting weeks or months and then just like building up resentment towards that person when you could have talked about it when it happened. And like we said, maybe it's something they didn't notice, they didn't do on purpose. And it's something that can just be easily fixed. Versus you hold on to that, and then stuff starts piling up until you're like, you're a horrible person, I don't want to be your friend anymore.
Yeah. If they don't know they did you wrong, or they don't know that something bugged you, they're going to do it again because they don't know. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, that might be the rapport of somebody else, but that's not, like, how it is with you. Mm-hmm. So, like you said, it's good to call it out.
Yeah. The next one says, we complete each other. As it is, there are many parts, but one body. So how we talked about that earlier. So we're all given different gifts. And I think that's so amazing. And I feel like I talk about this on every podcast because I love this so much. And I think I love it so much because for the longest time, I would look on social media, see what other people were doing, and think that I had to do that because that brought them success. Instead of looking at that person has a specific gift that God gave them, and that's why they're successful at what they're doing. It's not that this thing will make you successful. No, it's what's already inside of you and you developing what God gave you. That's what's going to make you successful. And we need each other. Mm-hmm. We need the person who's really good at math, because me and numbers, that is not my gift. I need the person who is extroverted and super like cheerleader type because that's not my personality. So sometimes I need someone to just pull me out of my books and be like, hey, let's go have some fun.
Mm-hmm.
And she has a list of like different friends, and my friends need someone who will listen to them and give them sound advice as best as she can. And that's what I'm good at naturally. That's what I bring to the table. So we need each other to come together, and everybody bring to the table what their gifts are, and then we create the body.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I refer things a lot back to work, but so I used to work on crews, right? And we would build stuff, and I could see big picture, and I could see what's needed in big picture, and I can think of the details and all that's going in. My mind works that way, and I can plan it out. I'm good at that. I'm good at planning, leading it in the big picture, and being like, hey, this is gonna work. This isn't gonna work. We're gonna do this way, this way. But when it comes down to getting done in the details, that's when I'm like, I'm more like. Only way to explain it for me is like blunt force. Like, I'm just moving and I'm getting all the things done. And then when it comes back to the tedious details things, I need somebody who does tedious details. Because that's not me. I have patience. I show kindness. Mm-hmm. But I guess I'm high strung. Mm-hmm. So slowing me down like that, where it's like the little details or making sure that this is lined up perfect, it's like, that's not for me. And I know I'm not good at that. Mm-hmm. So I can do all the big picture stuff. But when it comes to work or projects getting done and stuff like that, I need that help on that. And I know that. I'm aware of that. Have I worked on it? Yes. Am I going to say that I'm excellent and do all that now? No, but I'm aware of that. Mm-hmm. And I know people who are really good at that. And those are the people I would depend on.
This episode was brought to you by BCN Supplements, our all-natural supplement company. And for our listeners, we do have a discount code if you visit our website, www.bcnsupps.com. You can use code BUILT, BUILT, for 10% off. Thank you so much for listening. Yeah. And I know you brought it back to work, but I'm going to take it to our baby shower. Because we usually DIY everything. Like, from the engagement to the wedding shower to the actual wedding to the baby shower, everything. So we've learned within our family who's good at what. Yeah. And like, for me, I feel like I have this idea.
Yeah.
And then you're the organizer, the planner, basically like the project manager. Yeah. And then my aunt's really good at decorating. Mm-hmm. And then detail. And then we know, like, we have people who are really good at like, I know, like, I can go to Sarai for balloons for sure. She's also good at decorating.
Her and your aunt are creative.
Yeah.
And creative people are normally good with detail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then just like everybody else who shows up, sometimes, people are just like, hey, tell me what to do, and I'll do it.
Some people are just there to make you laugh. They're helping you, but they're taking that stress away. Mm. And that's what they're good at. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's funny because for the baby shower, I was like, okay, this is the idea. This is my vision that I'm seeing. And then so we were like setting up the night before, and you weren't there because you were at work. Mm-hmm. So we kind of like had stuff there, but we're like, we gotta wait for Juan. he'll pull this together. Yeah. When you sent me the picture, I automatically was like, no, we gotta move some things. It looked good. The decorations, the details were good, but it was missing this is going to go here, flow into this. It's going to do that big picture, bringing it all into like that. Yeah. And I know that already, so I don't even try because I'm like, that's not what I'm good at. So yeah, they would ask me, hey, what do you think about this, or where does this go? I'm like, I don't know. And that was, I told you, like, I kept telling them, I don't know. And but like, we did as much as we could, and then you came in the next day and you like brought it all together. Yeah. Because I was like, Juan's not here. I don't know. Yeah, and the families learned that enough to where I was actually the planner for your cousin's wedding.
Oh, yeah.
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 Because for our wedding, we had our planner, and I was like, I could do this. And then they were like, hey, we're getting married. I was like, hey, the best wedding gifts I can give you is I will plan and run your wedding the day of. Yeah. And it came out pretty good.
Yeah. And I think that's awesome that we found like our gifts,
Mm-hmm.
and we're like we stick to what we know. So we stick to what we know we're good at.
Yeah. I think that comes a lot from me from... I found out I was good at that from work, from different work experiences, and then it's just... It gave me success in my jobs that I've had.
Yeah. And then whenever I did the DISC assessment on you, on your personality, it confirmed that also. And it was like, hey, you would be a great project manager.
Yeah.
Because you love organization.
I do.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're very, like, determined. Like, yeah, like, to me it's so cool when I do DISC assessments and then I read people's personalities, because if they're close to me, I'm like, yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, if I don't know them that well, they're like, hey, yeah. They're like, what the heck? What is this?
So if you need a DISC assessment done...
Send me a message. No, but for real. Alright. And then so we talked about how we complete each other. And then the last one is we need each other to live out the purposes of God. So each member belongs to all of the others. We have different gifts. So what I just talked about. So when it comes to the purpose of God, you know, you look at a church, you have the pastors, you have the prayer partners, you have the counselors, you have the volunteers, you have, you know, the greeters at the door. Like, everybody has a role to play. And I just think it's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to me it's so cool because I'm like, I never noticed that before. Like,
how everything comes together.
Yeah. Like, everybody has a specific function.
Yep.
And there's not one person that has to do it all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, so then it says individualism has gotten in the way of this. So the whole individualism, independent movement makes people think, I have to do it all on my own. Mm-hmm. Like, how many people don't start a business and they don't delegate because they're like, I have to do it. And then what happens? Burnout.
Mm-hmm.
They're wasting time on things they're not good at when they could be growing and capitalizing on what they are good at.
Yeah. 100%.
But they don't take the time to be like, okay, I'm good at this, so I'm going to focus on this. And I got to find someone who can help me with this, this, and this. And I feel like people who try to do that, not only in business, but just in life in general, that's why they end up getting anxiety. Because they feel like they have the weight of the world on their shoulders. They're trying to do everything themselves. And it's like, you don't actually have to.
100%.
Ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, so that's just chapter 2.
I thought we were getting it. I thought we were blowing through this thing.
No, but we haven't. So I think it's been like 40 minutes by now. Maybe? Yeah, I don't know. But I feel like we're at 40 minutes. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this part 1. And then we'll come back with part 2 to continue talking about community.
Okay.
All right. All right, so if you like this episode, if you found it helpful, please give it a like. Leave us a comment what resonated with you, and send it to someone who you think might need to hear this. We'll see you guys on the next one.